selling. And my title is, I'm a farmer. Do I really have to sell? And the answer is yes, you do. And as a matter of fact, that's probably one of the biggest failure points for most people in this whole area of restorative, regenerative, holistic farming and ranching, is that people don't know how to sell, and they don't like to sell. And there's nothing wrong with that, not liking to, but you should at least know some basics. And if you don't like to sell, you better figure out how to partner with somebody who does and get them to work along with you and possibly make them some kind of a business relationship where they can profit along with you from what you do in marketing and sales. For as long as I can remember, my biggest pet peeve about traditional monoculture, industrialized, fence row to fence row farmers is that their attitude is, I take my grain to the elevator, I take my cattle to the auction yard because my grandpa did it that way, my dad did it that way, so it's got to be good for me. If you have that attitude today, it's likely it's going to be tough for you to succeed. So this topic is an important one, not always a popular one, but something that you should think about. So I'm going to start out with a question. How many of you would put a 1 in if you really like to sell? Put a 9 in if you hate to sell, and put something in between. So going from 1, meaning you love it, and 9 being you really don't like it at all. So I've already got 1 9. And that came really quickly. I'm not going to identify anybody. Got some 6s, got some 8s, got a 4. That's the highest so far. Got a 5. So it's kind of as I suspected. At the very best, most of you are sort of just semi-comfortable or be in the middle of the road. And on the average, probably averaging out about a 7. And it is key in this particular area, because that's what's going to distinguish you from those farmers that are and ranchers that are in the traditional area. You're not going to get subsidies like they do. You're not going to get the benefit of potential corruption that there is in government agencies that favors the traditional farmer. You're going to have to win on the merit of your products and your ability to sell them, your products and services. And I don't think you're going to hear a single person ever teach in the eat world that doesn't believe that you probably are going to have to operate your business today much like farmers and ranchers operated their business 100 years ago, and maybe as little as 70 or 80 years ago. But you start getting much closer than that. You go to a different world, because the way farmers and ranchers handled their business 70 years ago and all the way back to the beginning of written history was as multiple revenue center businesses, not
This was the last slide we went to before we started on the Great Lakes story, and we showed how a stream system would be affected by industrial waste, urban waste, water treatment systems, agricultural runoff, and all of the things that happen, biological and chemical transformations attachment to soil, to sediments, and then release from the sediments, settling and resuspension because of movement of the water along the bottom, and also by organisms, uptake by organisms on the bottom and in the water, storage in the stream bed. All that, those things are the elements of contamination that occurs, all over the world. So that's how we kind of ended our last session. So now we're going to talk about not pollutants necessarily, or they shouldn't be, although nitrogen is at times. What are those essential nutrients in an aquatic system? Well, the major ones are the same ones that are important in land-based agriculture and systems, which is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So what is the nitrogen cycle? Remember, we've talked lots about cycles, and we've seen lots of different ones. We're going to talk about the nitrogen cycle today. Next week, we'll talk about the phosphorus and the sulfur cycle. So let's just start in the air. Nitrogen is the most abundant element in our air. Over 70% of our air is made up of nitrogen molecules. And yet, organisms aren't equipped to utilize nitrogen directly from the air. So something has to happen. It has to be converted. So it gets converted. So it falls. It comes down to the earth mainly in precipitation. It isn't. The organisms don't just take up nitrogen through their breathing. Lightning can sometimes fixate it, which means change it. But mainly it'll end up on the ground, and the process to make it available to organisms begins in the ground. And it begins with nitrogen fixing plants. We're going to talk a little bit more about them. It occurs from biological, bacterial, and other microbial action, fungi, and other organisms. And the process is a conversion that occurs to where it gets converted by microbiological means to to ammonia. That ammonia, and after it is just elemental into in the air. Organic matter takes it up, it gets decomposed, it becomes ammonia. Ammonia goes through a nitrification process and becomes nitrites. Another step in nitrification converts the nitrites to nitrates, and it's nitrates that are uptakeable by plants, and both freshwater plants as well as terrestrial plants. So it's normally a good thing unless it gets out of whack in terms of its amounts. So, and it can also be a source for the foundation of fossil fuels. So that would have been a long time ago, as that nitrogen was taken up and then was stored in decomposing.
A kind of a glossary or a glazing over of social media. I'm not going to get into a lot of depth. Wayne will add more depth as we go through it. So these are the biggest social media platforms that are out there right now, and some people would probably argue with me about Google+, but I'm going to leave it in there because it's Google. And the question is, which of these platforms should your startup support? And the answer is all of them. And Wayne's already said this, but I think I'd be giving you bad advice if I told you to focus on one or two. But I'd also be giving you bad advice if I told you it would take a team of 4 to 6 people, as we've already pointed out. Now, we do focus on Facebook, Twitter, and what's the other one? Instagram. And we don't really do much. We aren't using Google Plus very much, are we?
No, we use it more. Mark actually is really active on Google Plus.
Right. And obviously we use YouTube a lot as well. And some of these don't apply to everybody, but if it does, you need to understand how to use it. But one person really not even working full time is able to do, I don't know, how many hours a week is she working now? Half time?
No, she's not half time. She's probably quarter time, 10 hours a week.
Quarter time. All right. So we're running a business with a social media person that's working 10 hours a week. So you can see you do not need an agency and you don't need a big team to do this. You just need to have somebody that's dedicated, passionate, understands how to use it functionally, and is capable of doing the post. We're going to give you a lot of tools, information about how this works. But first of all, we want to talk a little bit about Facebook, because this is the McDonald's of social networking, and it's the platform that most companies use to reach customers. The last time I got these statistics, were approaching 2 billion users, and it has the largest blend of demographics of any social media platform. And it's a great medium for businesses to connect with prospective customers all over the world. I don't know whether this is actually true or not, but it says it's the easiest to manage and allows for the best possible targeting. I'm sure the targeting part is right. The easiest part, I'd have to defer on that one. And Facebook ads allow you to match your buyers with over 2 million similar prospects with similar characteristics. There's a link in here about an algorithm history, and if any of you are interested in it, I would suggest you take a look at that, because it'll give you some idea of how their algorithms have changed over time.
He decided to leave the farm to go to the city to open up a butcher shop where he would offer only grass-fed pork in his butcher shop, just getting started. But, we can see that revolutionary spirit in him. It's really exciting. So, and we're, Boulder County, as we've kind of alluded to, is a place where, a lot of stuff has been tried, but it's been sort of stuck here around local food for years now, and farmers are very frustrated. But there are emerging here in Boulder County a handful of very bright, very passionate, and very wise young people that we think will emerge as the leaders. We feel like, we finally have somebody that we can hand this job off to, that they will take up the baton from here. And some of those are going to be at our Food Shed Catalyst Convergence here in Boulder next week, which runs February 15, 16, 17. It's a 3-day workshop, and I think I've provided you guys the links to that. But that's going to be an extraordinary gathering. Yeah.
Mark, or everybody, look on the page here. You guys should see it. It says Local Food Shed, which gives the page. So Mark, if you would put that into the Q&A also.
Yeah, the links are in the chat.
Great.
Okay. Good. Well, thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. So Michael, all that said, I totally agree with you. And one of the things about your story, again, another good segue, I kind of see us focusing sometimes way too much on only one aspect of local food, which is production. And instead, I think the biggest challenge, because the biggest issue I hear from local farmers, and I'm around a lot of them, is if they really get honest and they admit it, at the end of every season, they've wasted 50% or more of their food because they couldn't find a good way to get value added out of it or do something to really get it into the marketplace. What are you doing to encourage people that can get involved at any level? You do not have to be a farmer to be involved in local food.
Absolutely.
All levels.
It starts with eaters, first of all, and it starts with us as eaters.
If you have a limiting belief that you don't deserve something, we really want to get over that and realize that we are deserving of it. But if it's so deeply ingrained in us, and especially if it's so deeply ingrained generationally almost, it may take a little bit longer. So when we're tapping, we're going to really just say, I deserve. So I'm just going to do what we call a round of tapping now over this whole. We start with our hands over our heart, and we're just saying a deep breath. Taking a deep breath, but we're not taking it from the shallowness of our heart area here. Thank you, Lisa. The points there are up on screen. We're actually going to take a breath from our belly. So we're going to feel it in our stomach area, which is our third chakra, which is our energy center, which helps us metabolize our emotions as well as our food. So we want to get rid of this feeling of not deserving it. We want that to be dissolved and to break up, just like food breaks up the goodness and that goes around our body. We want this feeling of I'm not good enough to be dissolved, and to just, this one we want to dissipate. So we're taking a breath right from our belly as we put our hands over our heart, and we're just taking a big deep breath. I deserve to lose this weight. Another deep breath. I want to lose this weight. Now we're going to do a full round of EFT tapping. Top of the head. I deserve to lose this weight. Center of the forehead. I want to lose this weight. Eyebrow points. I deserve to lose this weight. Side of the eye. I allow myself to lose this weight. I allow myself to lose this weight. I deserve to lose this weight. I really want this. I allow myself, get rid of anything that's holding me back. Points at the very, very side of the thumb, and all the other points there on the picture there. I deserve to lose this weight. I want to lose weight. I allow myself to lose weight. I deserve to have sweetness in my life. I allow myself to find sweetness. Side of the hand. I allow myself to find sweetness in things other than food. I want to lose weight. I deserve it. Hands over the heart, and a big breath from the belly again. And a big deep out breath.
If you were to just sort of gauge the majority of people who are trying to do commercial chicken production in a, let's call it a natural way, so they're not Tyson's or whatever, are they mainly buying chickens that are going to be at that 100-leg area, or are there others, a lot of others out there like you in all the rest of the country, around the world, where you can buy chickens that would be 300 laying days a year? And I don't want you to disparage others or whatever. I'm just trying to understand how widely available that is.
I don't think there are. Much of my client base are people that are in the business. They're making some portion of their living. They often buy, 400 or 1,000 of my layer chicks every year, and they usually I encourage them to get like 30% blue, 30% green, because I have a true green egg producer, and then I have a brown egg and then a few whites in there, and they sell them at like farmers markets, in the markets in the mountain towns around western Colorado, and they get $6 and $7 a dozen. It's incredible, but they like blending them like that, and because they're trying to make a living at it, it's critical that they get good egg production and good feed efficiency, because feed is the biggest cost in any poultry production practically. And so I'm even getting requests from companies that would be producing 10,000 at a time, because the other blue egg and green egg producers are not high production like mine are, because I'm going this different route and have been working on it since the late 90s, and I'm the only one that has a really true green, an avocado green egg, like those blue ones there. My goal is to make them
find one of those on those picture page that you were on. So it has all those.
Right there from you, from my chickens. This is a bucket of eggs from the ones I got from you.
and they should be close to commercial production that the big industry uses. And I put pretty feathers on them because people like to name their chickens and whatnot, and they like their thing of beauty also. So I think that's important.
Is this the green over here, or it's hard sometimes pictures, Sarah, way over there on the left. I wondered if that was maybe the green.
There's some greens.
There we go.
Yeah.
There's greens in that picture, yeah.
Yes. Those blues are mine. These, I don't know whose those are, but those look like a Moran's on the far right. But my green is actually doesn't breed true. It's a cross with one of my blue lines and a light brown line.
Rodents that are tunneling in the ground, if they're going to be hibernating in the wintertime, they're not stupid. They dig their tunnels down below the frost line, so when the water flows across frozen ground, it's not soaking in. Then it goes down their tunnels, hits the thawed soil, and it soaks in down there. Here's another example. You can see all the water and even wash the grass right down into that little hole there. There's oodles of bathtub drains. Now, if I was putting rodent poison out to kill all these rodents in my quote-unquote orchard area, I wouldn't have the benefits of water infiltration, so I'd probably have to use drip irrigation to get the irrigation that I'm not getting because I'm letting all the water wash away. Goes in, must come out. This right up the top of the screen here is a rodent hole. You just look at all the sediment and debris that has come out. So here's more ecological disturbance. The material that was all green and wonderful here got buried with more silt and chunks of plastic and whatever else it is that was in that hole and got washed out. And just to show you a couple of things around, you can go online and look at all kinds of ridiculous pictures of animal tunnels. But in their tunnels, so these tunnels now, water's flying down in it. Well, some of these that are up like this, and up like this, up like this, the water goes in, and now they're in an airlock chamber, and they're perfectly safe from all this flood water that now goes down into their other tunnels. And no doubt, as soon as the water starts flowing down the walls, they're like, honey, let's go up to the nursery and spend the night up there. So they go up there, and I've never seen rodents getting washed out of their tunnels. So somehow they've got these little safety rooms in there that are airlocked up above the water. Now, what's really significant, how it relates directly to restoration agriculture, is human disturbance is a disturbance. It still is. Like in the case of mining here, it may be a lot more devastating than some kind of natural disturbance. Arguably, this is no more disturbing than volcanic eruption like Mount St. Helens. And what's even fascinating about this is even in serious mining operations, strip mine, mountaintop removal operations, there are still legacies left behind. Wind-blown seed still comes in and colonizes it. Fungi are somehow still able to colonize, and mycelium goes all through this mess, even if it's toxic, believe it or not. There's life in there. There is some sort of legacy left behind here, and it is still going through succession into the future. All these different things, logging, mining, fire suppression, construction, settlement, clearing for agriculture, all of these are ecological disturbances. And if we remember that disturbance is an observable event in time that changes the structure, species composition, and the function of an ecosystem. Agriculture, how we get our food, is an ecological disturbance.
This is a picture of the cattle, the herd of cattle, moving out into the field, the area where they will be grazing for the day. This is at dawn, and the sun is just beginning to give you a taste of the heat that will be bearing down on that landscape throughout the day. It gets really, really hot out there in Zimbabwe. I can tell you. And that visit to Zimbabwe, one thing I will always remember is that it really gave me a new appreciation for a cool glass of white wine at the end of the day, because the sun goes down. It goes down quickly in Africa. The sun goes down quickly, and suddenly it's cool and it's so refreshing and beautiful. And of course, we also had the great pleasure of being with Allan Savory and hearing him tell us stories about the rhino that entered camp, and when he was taking a bath and things like that. So anyway, many, many pleasant memories in Zimbabwe. Neil, there's a a statement that you made on a podcast. I think it was Earth Repair Radio, which is a podcast that I love and I've been telling people about. The statement that you made an impression on me, and it speaks to the importance of infiltration. You defined a desert this way, as a place where where it floods whenever it rains, because there is no capacity for the water to infiltrate. I mean, floods don't just matter.
You go through Iowa, looks just like this for hours, and row crops really do fit for outdoors. I don't think we're going to see soybeans and corn indoor growing, not in quantities, to make products like corn syrup and things like that.
It would have to be totally automated to do that. Totally, yeah.
Oh, if they have, I don't know if you've kept up with this, but we've been in several of these accelerator programs. We won the Minnesota Cup, and then we won the National Sustainability Award for the Clean Tech Open, and we got to know some of the other people in ag, and I mean a lot of the money is going into the innovation right now of drones. Flying over farm fields and being able to do imaging and figure out where the nutrients are in a certain part of the field, and then going in with a fertilizer and only broadcasting the fertilizer in that part of the field that needs it. And another one where it comes down with a little robot that goes down the row and goes to each plant and like injects the fertilizer into the roots. So you're using a lot less, and of course if you're putting nitrogen out there and it gets washed out into the streams and lakes and all that, you've got problems.
Which is why we're so much more environmentally sound than other farming models.
Yeah, and the only thing I can say about row crops going indoor is if you're going to be working, there's a company here in the Twin Cities that does a lot of GMO gene splicing on plants and things like that, and we don't do any work for them, but they had approached us about growing test batches of soybeans. So they were going to genetically modify soybeans and wanted to grow them in our system, and that's that might be used for indoor farming for that, especially when you're genetically modifying something, you may not want that out in the rest of the world. It's kind of opening up Pandora's box. I think we've seen that with this Monsanto. The wind blows the pollen from one field to the next.